Podcast. Real news. Analyzed by real intelligence.
Remember those packed theaters? That anticipation for the next big summer blockbuster? Remember that electric feeling, everyone buzzing about the movie? Feels different now, doesn't it?
It's definitely not what it was a couple of years ago.
That shift, that change we're feeling, that's what we're diving into today, trying to figure out, is this the end of blockbusters? Is this just, a bump in the road after the pandemic? All right, so get this. We're diving into the 2024 box office numbers today. And, well, it's not pretty.
Yeah, more like a box office flopbuster, am I right? And the numbers are, there's something else.
Seriously, we're talking about the worst Memorial Day weekend for ticket sales in, almost 30 years. Memorial Day. You know what I mean? That's like prime time for summer blockbusters.
What's interesting, though, is that it's not just like a couple movies that tanked this year. It's like a pattern.
So what are we talking here? Give me the numbers.
Across the U.S. and Canada, ticket sales are down by 22% compared to last year.
Whoa, 22%? That's huge. I mean, okay, so we saw Furiosa, that Mad Max spinoff, right? Only made like $32 million opening weekend.
Yeah.
Last year's The Little Mermaid killed it, made almost 4 times that. Even Ryan Gosling and Emily Blunt couldn't save The Fall Guy.
And you know those box office tracking models? The studios live and die by those things.
Yeah.
Totally useless now. They cannot seem to get it right. For example, May 2024 was projected to rake in something like $750 million.
Okay.
Ended up like $570 million.
Yikes. So we know ticket sales are down, but what's the reason? Is this a temporary thing, or is this like a sign of the times? How people are consuming entertainment these days.
I think there are definitely some bigger trends at play here, the most obvious one being streaming services, obviously.
Yeah, it's hard to ignore that, right? Streaming is everywhere. But is it really enough to explain this huge drop in people going to the movies?
Well, think about it this way. Streaming isn't just about convenience anymore. These platforms are creating really high-quality content now. I mean, like big budget stuff that rivals even surpasses the movies.
That's
Think like those Marvel shows, the Star Wars spin-off stuff that used to be guaranteed box office hits.
Yeah, it's getting competitive out there, for sure.
Yeah.
But speaking of competition, don't you think Hollywood's kind of to blame here, too? I mean, we are drowning in sequel, prequels, remakes. It's like they've forgotten how to make an original movie.
There's a term for that, actually, sequel fatigue.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's definitely a real thing. Audiences are tired of seeing the same old stuff. They want fresh stories, new voices.
Yeah, something you haven't seen a million times already. And instead we get the Garfield movie. Seriously, a CGI Garfield.
And even when they do try to do something original, it's not a guaranteed win. You know what I mean? Remember Amsterdam?
Oh, yeah.
Stacked cast, interesting premise,
Yeah.
but totally bombed.
Yeah, that's true.
It just goes to show you that audiences are looking for more than just a recognizable name or franchise. They want quality. They want to be entertained.
So we've got streaming services changing how we watch movies, sequel fatigue setting in, but there's one more thing, right? The elephant in the room with the picket sign.
Yeah, the strikes definitely haven't helped. The actors and writers' strikes have just thrown the entire industry into chaos.
It's like slamming on the brakes, just as the summer blockbuster season was about to take off.
And from what I've been reading, even before the strikes happened, experts were predicting a rough year for Hollywood.
It's true, the warning signs were there. But yeah, those strikes, they really threw a wrench in things, didn't they? But let's not forget about, the bright spots, okay? There were some wins.
Oh, absolutely. Barbenheimer, for example. That was a phenomenon.
Right. For a minute there, it felt like the movies were back. People were getting dressed up, going all out.
It was incredible. And it really defied all the odds. You know what I mean?
Totally. It wasn't a sequel. It wasn't based on a comic book.
Right?
And it was, genuinely original.
And it goes to show you that people are craving something different.
For sure. That whole Barbenheimer thing just proves that people still want that theatrical experience. Because there is one movie that's totally defying all these trends, and it's not exactly a news story. It's wild. It's like every other movie struggling, and then you've got Deadpool and Wolverine just smashing records left and right.
Over 1.3 billion globally.
In this economy. That's not an accident. Something's working here.
It tells you something about what's working right now.
Yeah.
We were talking about originality.
Yeah.
But this movie, it's like they leaned into it. It's self-aware, a little crazy. Definitely not your average superhero flick.
We got to talk about that R rating. We've talked before about how there aren't enough of those R-rated superhero movies, and this one
Totally.
really went for it. Was that the secret ingredient, that it was R-rated?
I think it's part of it. It let them make a Deadpool movie, a Wolverine movie. It gave them that freedom to be true to those characters, and I think fans really responded to that. Plus, you got to give them credit for the marketing. All those trailers, Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman going back and forth online, pure genius. They knew exactly how to get people talking.
They really did. But one more thing I noticed. Disney, they own Deadpool now, right? They didn't even release it for streaming. At all.
Nope. Straight to theaters.
Which feels kind of old school now, doesn't it?
It's a risk, for sure. But it worked. Made it feel like an event, like you got to go see it now. You'll miss out if you don't.
Maybe that's what we've been missing, that event feeling. Remember when going to the movies was a whole thing? You got dressed up, met up with people.
Yeah, you actually talked about the movie after you saw it.
Wow.
Right.
I think Deadpool and Wolverine might have just brought that back.
Fingers crossed.
Okay, but even with a hit like that, you can't deny streaming's changing the game. It's not just about convenience anymore, is it?
Definitely not. It changes everything about how we see movies. Why go out to a theater when you can watch something amazing at home right now?
Right. And it's not just convenience. Look at the shows Disney's putting out, the movies Netflix is making, big stars, big budgets.
It's not just TV anymore. It's like almost as good as the movies.
Right. And it makes you think, with all this talk about the death of cinema,
Right.
is it really dying? Or is it just transforming?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't
Yeah.
it? And speaking of million-dollar questions, did you see that article about the theater closing in the Bronx?
Yeah, I saw that.
It's kind of alarming when you think about it. An entire borough of New York City, 1.7 million people.
I know.
And they're down to just one movie theater.
It really makes you realize this isn't just about Hollywood losing money. It's about communities losing access to the arts, to shared experiences.
Exactly. It's about more than just the bottom line.
Okay, but back to Barbenheimer for a second. Is it possible that was just a fluke, like a one-hit wonder?
It's a fair question.
Okay, so what does that mean for movies? Is this the end, or we're all just going to be watching movies at home forever now?
I wouldn't say that I think Hollywood is very good at adapting. Remember, it's all about finding that balance.
So you're saying this isn't the end of the movie, it's just an intermission.
Maybe. A chance to switch up the snacks and find a better seat.
I like that. So what's next? What are the studios doing to adapt?
Well, one thing we're seeing is shorter theatrical windows.
So they're putting movies on streaming services faster? Makes sense, I guess. Strike while the iron's hot, right?
Right. It's about giving people what they want, and right now they want to watch stuff at home. But it's not just about changing viewing habits. It's about remembering why movie theaters are so special.
True. Nothing beats seeing a movie on the big screen with surround sound and a giant bucket of popcorn.
It's a completely different experience.
And I don't know about you, but after staring at my phone and laptop all day, sometimes I just want to disconnect, get lost in a story.
Oh, for sure. There's just something magical about movies.
Yeah.
About that shared experience in a dark room. It's kind of transportive.
It's like the difference between listening to an album at home and seeing a band live. I mean, they're both good, but there's nothing like that live energy.
Exactly.
All this makes you wonder, though, how are the writers and directors and everyone involved in making movies, how are they dealing with all this change?
It's a great question. And it's important to remember that the decline in box office revenue, it doesn't just affect the big studios. It trickles down to everyone in the industry.
Yeah.
That's why those surprise hits, those breakout movies are so important.
Yeah. Because a movie like Get Out or Everywhere All at Once, it's not just a good movie, it's like a shot in the arm for the whole industry.
It reminds everyone that there is still new and exciting stories being told. Stories that push boundaries and challenge conventions.
So it sounds like it all comes down to finding the right balance between streaming and theaters, between playing it safe and taking risks.
It's about creating a space where both can exist, where audiences have choices, and where storytellers have the freedom to experiment and try new things.
So maybe this whole thing, this box office slump, is actually a good thing, like a chance for Hollywood to hit the reset button and come back stronger?
That's an interesting way to look at it. It's definitely a time of transition and change, but it's also a time for creativity and innovation. This is about us, the audience.
We're the ones who decide what's a hit, what matters. Every time we choose a movie, we're choosing what we want to see more of.
It's true. We have more power than we realize.
Well, I don't know about you, but I'm feeling cautiously optimistic about the future of movies.
Me too. There's still magic to be found in those darkened theaters.
Well said. That's all the time we have for today's deep dive, but it gives us a lot to think about. What are you going to watch next? What kind of stories are important to you? We'll see you next time for another look behind the curtain. Until then, thanks for listening.
I am Fast, real news, analyzed by real intelligence.